Welcome to this in-depth review of the all-new Peugeot 2008. This compact SUV as the e-2008, the all-electric version. This will be very interesting. Exterior, interior and the driving experience. Now in full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! The electric version, the e-2008, you can get in different trims. Also in the GT trim, we can see it right here. So it looks kind of similar also in lower part, but the e-2008 always has a different front grille. First of all, we see those horizontal dots, we call them, and they're also in the same vehicle color. Vertigo blue it is, and well, that's what we call Thomas blue on Autogefuehl, a very, very strong blue. Quite nice, isn't it? So this is, one differentiation for the E version. And one more design element here in the front, which is different in the E2008. Here, the Peugeot line, it's not only in chrome, but it has this contrast color. And this one here, depending on the light angle, it looks greenish or a little bit bluish, more greenish than bluish. But again, this is another small differentiation. Beautiful evening sun here in the French Luberon. And also, again, this beautiful vertigo blue color here with the E2008. You can see the side profile. Yeah, I'm glad they did not go for fake exhaust here on the E2008. So well done. Yeah, I mean, again, in this blue color, again, the same design. So that you have the GT badge right there, because this is also possible to have as a GT version. And then on the other side here, the E2008, that's the second thing where you can see that's actually the electric version. Well, and then overall, I think design, it's quite daring. It is indeed different than the competitors. At the same time, they have a lot of, element and sporty design features, especially here in the GT versions. I can just say, I like it pretty much. Design from the exterior. Let's discuss it in the comments. Front wheel drive only, also for the electric version. 136 horsepower and 9 seconds is the acceleration figure to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. So a little bit slower than the top petrol engine. And talking about the battery, here by the way, we still have this charger that we don't deplete the battery with the interior functions to, again, just show purposes. But this one here will always be the same case here, the front electric motor. And the battery size is 50 kilowatt hours. So that's actually quite decent. And that gives an official range of 320 kilometers or 200 miles. And charging is up to 11 kilowatt AC and up to 100 kilowatt DC. Interesting is that this grey fabric in Alcantara, this one is indeed reserved here for the EV version, for the E2008. So it's the same styling as for the materials and stuff, but the color is different. This one only for the EV. I'm 1.86 or 6'1", and when I have it in the lowest position, there is still some headroom left. There is a panoramic roof here, an optional one, and you can even open it. So it's not just one way to just have the slider, so you can open it, and it's actually not too small. Also, in the width right there, and of course you can also, but it seems you have to hold it, so it's not like this easy function, and then you can also have this cover. And this cover then here is manual, but we'll leave it open for you. Well, and I would put the seat a little bit higher that we don't, fall too far back actually, and make it a little bit steeper right there. And yeah, it's actually a good seating position also for tall people. As for the seat, especially here, those GT Sport seats, they're a little bit bigger, a little bit wider also, and they really keep you tight. That's cool. And then this steering wheel, you can adjust it, but how it feels like from the function, that is a little bit cheaply done, I think. So that's something to criticize in the interior build quality. The seat is marvelous, definitely also build quality wise, but here the steering wheel function, I'm not sure. And maybe you can already see it from here. Especially if you're a tall driver, you always have sometimes little, problems here with the steering wheel because it blocks then the view to there. Then again, this one is positioned quite high that you don't need a separate head-up display. That's the philosophy. But for tall people, and also with my legs, I have to put the steering wheel all the way up because even here it gets closed with the legs. So not a fan of that. And also what they haven't paid attention to, look at here. The floor mat, I think that's, safety relevant. There is no fixation in the front there for this floor mat, so not sure what this is about. So you see, there's light and shadow here in this interior. I mean, it looks amazing and very modern, very futuristic, and again, seats great. It's also super much fun to control it with the steering wheel here, but it has some limitations here. Yeah, so but I somehow like it when we can talk about many things in a car. What's your take on that? So, optional, you can get this 10-inch digital screen, and it has this 3D effect. You can pick it a little bit up on the camera. So it's like 2 layers, so it appears even more three-dimensional, of course, with your own eyes. So this 0 from the kilometers an hour, and also this battery pack visualization from the car. This one it would be the front layer, and the other layer is behind it. So very interesting technology. And you're, of course, a little bit flexible for what you want to display here and how you want to change the layout. So that's the advantage of those digital instruments. So pretty fancy thing, actually. Is it too distracting? I'm not sure. I mean, you can also have some GPS visualization here, for example. So that's actually the biggest advantage, that you don't have to look over to the central infotainment screen. So it's a nice option to go for, definitely. Now the interior overview. Again, the top part here is soft touch. And then there's a hole right here, so you can grab around that. Well, this is a, unique design, so to say. In the view to the digital instruments, you can see how the steering wheel sometimes blocks it, especially when I have to put the steering wheel all the way up. And on the steering wheel, by the way, on the left side, you control those digital instruments here with rolling this one here, and also for volume up and down. And on the right side, then this more has an effect on what's happening on the right side. For the music, for example, and picking up the phone. Well, then you have here this carbon fiber insert once again. It's not really carbon fiber, it's rather, also soft touch. That's interesting. So you can really, squeeze that. Pretty interesting. Then this 10-inch screen, standard would be a 7-inch screen, so a smaller one. Optional, or included in the higher trims, a 10-inch screen. Then also with the GPS, you can have that one. But also the small screen would feature Apple CarPlay or Android Auto already. And in the lower part right here, you can activate the seat heating. It's pretty complicated to reach it, especially while driving. How can you do that? And then those hotkeys for the GPS, here, for example, to access the climate menu, because you have to do that everything in the screen. So adjusting the climate. This is rather a car where we set 22 degrees Celsius and AC on and auto and leave it like this, because controlling it while driving is then a little bit complicated. There's also a GPS hotkey, for example. Then you can access the GPS and so on. And let's say the visualization is rather basic, and the pinch and zoom is also a little bit laggy. So not such a fan of the software they have in here. And next to those hotkeys we have here, by the way, the E version also has then, especially the visualizations for the electric stuff. But that's the only thing that is really changing here. Other than that, it's almost all the same. And then you have some real physical buttons left, for example, for the hazard lights, for closing the car, AC Max, for example, and then one physical button here left for the volume, but that's also a little bit loosely attached. Further down below, what else can we see? This one here opens the QI. This one, see the inductive charging pad, if you want that one. Other than that, you have USB-C on the left or USB-A on the right. There I plug it in because, strangely, when I had the USB-C adapter on the left side, it did not activate the CarPlay. Here with the USB-A, it did activate the CarPlay, actually. Then you could put your smartphone here, or you could also put it here. But then again, your inductive charging plus cable charging does not make sense here at the same time. Then also with the cable here, you cannot close it anymore. So, not sure. But you can also leave it like this. This would also be possible in that way. Then we have the automatic shifting lever further down below in this, dolphin style, so to say. So put it behind for the D mode. Then even further, electric handbrake next to some non-adaptive cup holders, and then there's a driving mode selector as well. And last but not least, there's this armrest with a leatherette cover, and yeah, I mean, it's squeezed between the seats, so you don't really realize it would be loose. And then when you put it up, you have some more storage below. A little bit complicated because, some more splitters, but yeah, I mean, you could put that one in the top part, obviously, to have like a small cubby hole on top. So now that we have connected the Apple CarPlay, this is the integration, not all the way over the screen, but you see it right here. And you can also play, some music. This is then this standard audio system in here. This sounds actually quite good, quite standard. We can also test how it is different from with this optional focal sound system soon. And right there, just to show you how it integrated, and then, usually you go back to the screen somewhere, maybe like this, but it would be just that you use the lower buttons, and again, then you can go back to this Peugeot menu. So now we switch the cars again with the focal sound system, and indeed the it sounds richer, so more depth, so to say, really cool. So I can recommend that for music lovers. You have additional speakers on top of the screen. There's this additional focal speaker and also additional speakers at the A-pillars. And what about the rear? First of all, styling-wise, you can see here, by the way, hardpack at the inside of the doors at the rear, but at this price point, I think it's also okay. Well, the E2008, not too cheap. Yeah, we can argue about that. So you can see here the fabric seats again, or fabric Alcantara seats with leatherette on the outside. Again, a beautiful job. And let me get inside right here, because if you compare to the predecessor, this is of course something which has changed significantly. Now you can sit here with 4 tall adults, and it does indeed fit legroom and also headroom wise. It's actually quite decently comfortable, so nothing to criticize here. And again, this is a big difference to the predecessor. You could not do that well in the predecessor with hardly any legroom left. Now it is actually possible. On that, we have 2 more USB supplies here in the middle, ISOFIX at the outside, and then you don't have any middle armrest, but you do flip the seats from here already. We'll soon show you that from a trunk. In the trunk, you gain now about 80 liters if you compare it to the predecessor. Quite square dimensions. Then you have this cover, which you can also hold open. Then you have some more space underneath. And then only in the combustion engine version, you have more storage underneath. So possible for replacement tire as well. So here we go. But that way you have an even loading still. And the normal length of the trunk is about 75 centimeters, 1 meter in width, and also here 40 centimeters up to the top cover. And when you flip the seats like this, 1/3, 2/3 split, this one then is about 1 meter 50 up to the front seat. And it's nice to see that it's the same in the electric variant. So you even have the storage here underneath for your charging cable, for example, right there. Just below here, this one then is limited, and therefore the official figure is 30 liters less, but it's the same usability. And 2 facts in advance. First of all, this motor here is a permanent magnet synchronous motor, so this is among the efficient ones. So the same technology approximately the same that Tesla is also using. And also they developed, together with Michelin, special tires for this electric vehicle to make it more rolling efficient. So let's see how that one, brings some advantages for the energy consumption. However, it's hard to, do a real energy consumption test today. We will give you some figures, yes. And of course, the realistic one we do at a later stage. What is clear, it's already pretty cold today. So this one will drain the battery a little bit more. But let's see how that goes. Bienvenue chez un autre épisode d'Autogefuehl avec Thomas et Jonas. Well, that's for the French lesson for today. So, this one here now, the electric, the Peugeot E2008. Yeah, that's the way. And we want to start with the acceleration. Got the free road in front of us, private road, and we're very amazing. I can promise you, front wheel drive only, about 9 seconds is the official figure. I've put it to sports mode. Soon talk more about that. Let's just see how it goes. And let's go. And that's 100. Wow. So pretty quick, and also a very smooth acceleration. Really cool. And on paper it is slower than the strongest petrol engine, but actually it feels faster. Yeah, that's really funny and definitely really cool. So, and after we did this acceleration test, we will reset the consumption meter, that we get an accurate figure for that. GPS is as well. We have a nice route set. You can also just set that one on here. You can check out what's happening in the screen, like from recuperation wise, or green or then blue again when power is being applied to the wheels and so on. So it's always nice to look at, but maybe just predominantly for the co-driver. Of course, the really cool thing about the electric versions, as always, you start all silent. That's really cool, and it just it just relaxes you when you are driving all silent. It's just a nice feeling. So I always say, when you compare the combustion engine drive with the electric drive, it's always the better customer experience here with the electric vehicles. It's silent, it's at the same time powerful, so it's relaxing, and if you want, it's challenging it at the same time. And that's what's really making this experience. Other than that, that's really, I don't really like that. So when you turn down the volume while the GPS is giving a command, you cannot turn it down to 0. That's always a little bit annoying, definitely. So as for the other characteristics, of course, this car is heavier. Those batteries usually make up plus 300 kilograms or something like that, but you don't really feel that much. It's still not super heavy car, and you have to think about battery is placed in the bottom of the vehicle, and that means the center of gravity is actually quite low, and this is actually contributing then also to the driving feeling. So I wouldn't say it feels less agile. Yeah, maybe it feels a little bit heavier because it is, but watch the birds. I always wonder why the birds are flying on the road level, why they're just flying higher. So, and here, good slalom capabilities. Again, maybe it feels a little bit heavier, but at the same time, because the center of gravity is low, it still feels really, really good. Maybe even a little bit more stable because of that. And with this Cockpit, with a small steering wheel and this very modern setup, it again gives you a very unique driving feeling. And of course, torque is always there with the electric motor, so you can accelerate at any time, and it's just an effortless driving. That's pretty cool. As I said, they also use a permanent magnet motor, so synchronous drive, and this is usually also a pretty efficient drive, as we know from Tesla. And also this fact with the extra developed tires with less rolling resistance, so this is also contributing for the energy consumption. Does it feel different to drive than because of the tires or something? I wouldn't say so. So there is not a big difference in driving this one here and the petrol GT as for the general driving feeling. It's just again more silent, and that fits also to the nice noise insulation. And like from the power you get, it's of course a different power curve, because there's no real power curve with the electric motor, but there's a real power curve with the combustion engines. This one is a little bit different, but both were actually quite powerful. So we had the most powerful petrol engine, then here also the quite powerful electric motor. So they feel both very powerful for this smaller car, and it's just again a very fun driving experience. As this power delivery is more linear, you can play a little bit more with the throttle. You can fine-tune that acceleration, you have to be a little bit more gentle, because there's this direct torque input, and that's also pretty cool feeling, definitely. Now at the moment we're going uphill, and this also a big difference then. When you have the electric motor, you can always recuperate later on, and with the combustion engines, yeah, the energy is just lost, you know. So the overall efficiency is of course better, and if you have charging possibilities at home, it might really be the way to go for. Checking the prices also and the subventions in your market, and for example in Germany, when you have the GT, which is also the GT here, so GT electric versus GT petrol, it's about 8,000 euros difference. Soon there will be in Germany like those subventions for 6,000 euros, and then almost the price difference is made up, and then you have maybe better taxation and so on, and this can even everything out. So question is, do you have your infrastructure? I can just stress again, it's a pleasure to drive those electric vehicles, and the same accounts also for that. It's such a good, nice driving feeling here at 80 kilometers an hour, so about like 50 mph. It's actually quite refined and silent yet again, and the car feels very, very sporty indeed. Although it has this crossover SUV styling, it's one of those cars, although it's quite silent, it always feels like you would be driving a little bit faster than you actually would, because it's so sporty challenging. Again, with a small steering wheel, this rather narrow cockpit. I feel somewhat cramped in this cockpit, so I think it's not the most suitable for tall drivers. However, because of those sport seats, I still haven't gotten any back pain, also not the day before when I was driving the petrol engine. So I can really recommend those sport seats, no matter if they're in the bright fabric or in the darker fabric. That depends on if you have the GT petrol or the GT electric. So that's also quite astonishing. I mean, you maybe also see it on camera that I'm not sitting in the, let's say, best seating position, but still quite interesting that I still don't get any back pain. There. I was sure, is the GPS leading us there to this off-road route? Turning circle here, interesting. And even if I just accelerate uphill, and that's 70 kilometers an hour again. Wow, it's pretty cool. And again, how effortless and silent this acceleration is being delivered. So very good. So what about recuperation? How have they set everything? So if I just leave the throttle, the car is rolling pretty much. I can also push this shifting lever forward to N, neutral. The comparison to D mode is there is a, let's say, a little recuperation. So N would be just rolling free. You usually don't shift in there. D is recuperating just a little bit. There are no shifting pedals here. I would have expected that they maybe put shifting pedals here, then to go 1, 2, 3 level of recuperation or something. They did not do that. So the thing you can do actually, either then, leave the throttle, then it's little recuperation, or you can put the shifting lever to yourself, to the back, and then you're in the B mode. And in the B mode, there is a stronger recuperation. Then you can also see how it charges a little bit more. So that is possible, depending on when you're going down for a longer time. The driving modes, whereas in the petrol engine or diesel, it's about how, there's a predecessor 2008. Interesting to see. Then, in the combustion engines, how high the RPMs go, for example. This is like the more, when and where you're shifting. But here the driving modes is really directly connected to the Newton meter input. So this is really like in sports, you have more power. And when you go to the normal mode, a little bit less power, a little bit more delay. And then there's the eco mode. When you then hit the throttle, and the throttle is not that sensitive. So the thing is, when does the power start? Here in the eco mode, I can like nothing is happening now. But then, for example, in contrast to that, to the sports mode, it's like directly, just from the first tip on the throttle, we directly go further. I mean, probably you should just leave it in normal mode, so something in between. I don't know. You can try around with that. You know, with the very strong Teslas, I usually go to the softer modes because, you know, for everyday driving, it's sometimes too harsh, this Tesla acceleration. Here, then, I think you can just try around. And, well, I did some harsh accelerations once again. So let me just reset the consumption meter once again that we can get, you know, a realistic value without, you know, any of those experiments here. So let's... Yeah, there we go. Here, for example, going downhill, I could also set it to the B mode now, so recuperation is charging. This car is not set out to be only one. Whoa, this guy behind us is driving really fast in the transporter. So the interesting thing is that they did not set it on a one-pedal driving feeling. So I can, of course, use the normal brakes, and then first the recuperation would be done. I can also see that in this charging meter. And then when I need more braking, then also the normal brakes are being applied. So you can also just leave it in the D mode and work with that. That's possible as well. Or then again, use this B mode, have more something like a one-pedal feeling. But again, the recuperation, even from this B mode, is not that strong that you would drive in that all the time. Of course, when you stay on the throttle, then there's no recuperation even in the B mode. You know, you can also fine-tune it with that and then just lift the throttle a little bit, push it again. So depending on how you like to drive best, you know. So some might prefer driving in the B mode all the time and play a little bit more with one pedal. But here, for example, when I'm driving a little bit faster and lift the throttle even in B mode, there is recuperation, but not as strong as we have in other electric vehicles with very, very strong recuperation mode. What is better or what is worse? It always depends on, because when you are rolling is always the best in using the energy and not recuperating, unless you want to really reduce your speed, or the next traffic light is coming, or the next car in front of you. Then of course it's good to use as much recuperation as possible. If it's the one pedal feeling or not, you can't say that, you know, one thing is better or the other thing. It just depends on how you like to drive. It is something more special, something more EV specific when you use the brake pedal less. But maybe you want to say like, I prefer driving as it would be a combustion engine car, like this normal feeling. Then you just leave it in D mode, use more rolling, and then use the brakes, you know, just on demand, for example. And no matter which speed we are rolling at the moment, again, especially up to 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour, the noise insulation is really good. Very, very high speeds, you hear something. But again, also if you compare it to competitors in the segment, noise insulation is actually quite good. And again, this platform feels quite stiff. And the extra weight from the batteries. Sometimes I have even the experience that the car does profit from the extra weight, which is, you know, put in the lower end, because it makes it stick more to the ground, so to say. Maybe that even cancels the maybe negative effect from the those rolling resistance optimized tires or something. I don't know. But definitely, again, a very good experience, and not such a huge difference between combustion and electric drive. That's also what they wanted to achieve. But yet again, I can say, if you just pick it from a driving experience as a customer, and don't worry about infrastructure or pricing or whatever, then, you know, the choice would always be the all-electric one, definitely. I'm not exactly sure what the range suggestion here at the moment does. So the battery is almost full, and at the beginning it said like 240 or 220 kilometers, depending on how we were driving. But that's a little bit strange, because the suggested range as for the WLTP cycle is 320 or 310 kilometers, depending on, you know, official papers. Sometimes say so, sometimes say so. It's about 200 miles. But here at the moment it seems it would be less. I mean, it's quite cold outside at the moment, 5 degrees Celsius. We do have the AC off though. And if you calculate the kilowatt hour consumption, so like the battery, the power output kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, just on on the calculator, it would be about 15 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers. So now we had some, corner driving, had some acceleration, but also some downhill, predominantly downhill, and then at the moment we are very low at about 8 or like about 9 kilowatt hours on 1 kilometers. That's of course again with the downhill, and that's where the electric vehicles are really good, because as soon as I lift the throttle, I have once again a recuperation. When I was doing like those acceleration, we were about 35 kilowatt hours on 1 kilometers. So that also shows, no matter if you go combustion engine or electric engine, if you really hammer the throttle, of course, the just the consumption is really high. And now we're going some uphill again, and we just check out how the consumption will evolve there, that we can give you, let's say, a close factor for that. At the end of the day, of course, to give you a very reliable figure as for that, we would need the car like for longer term and drive even more different situations and so on. But it's already quite cool to be able to drive it here today. You can have a lot of fun, and that's really what I take from both of those versions. In this really small SUV segment, I have to say, this one here was so far one of the most fun ones to drive. And again, more comfort than in the 208, which is just a normal small car. A little bit more comfort, especially with those GT seats, and so much fun to drive. It's really joy, and that's pretty astonishing. I was surprised by that. It doesn't look that much fun on the outside that it actually is to drive, So, and really nice looking exterior, and yeah, some of the parts here on the interior could be a little bit better as for the interior build finish. Not necessarily with the base entry-level engine price, but then again, if you go high up in the trims or maybe in electric and pay a little bit more money, then I think, yeah, that would be nicer right there. So we drive a little bit further here to give you some more accurate figures as for the kilowatt hour consumption. Here now we already get to a more realistic figure, because we went uphill. Now we're about 15 to 16 kilowatt hours on 1 kilometers, and that would indeed be the official calculated energy economy, let's call it that way. So that is a more realistic figure, and that's also something, then it would actually work with the official range. Not again sure what the prediction here is, but I think the prediction here is not that realistic. Now it was staying at 200 kilometers, like for last 10 kilometers. I'm not sure how those predictions are calculated. It differs from car to car. Some cars do it, like from more current data which the car is collecting. Some other cars do it from past data. Say like what was the fuel economy, and as for the past runs, and some mix it. So it really depends on. So sometimes they're really realistic, sometimes they aren't. So we have to see about that. But more realistic is, of course, when you take the the consumption figure, the current run, and then calculate it up to the size of the battery, or when you have the time, just drive the battery all empty. Now we're going predominantly downhill again, and I was staying in the B mode. So as soon as I lift the throttle, again some more recuperation, and that's actually quite good feeling. Since you also have engine brake in a petrol and a diesel engine, it does come close somewhat then also to a petrol or diesel engine when you are in this B mode, because you're always decelerating a little bit with the combustion engines again. So those are our impressions here with the electric drive. And now to our conclusion for today with the all-new Peugeot 2008 and the e-2008. Has been a very interesting 2 days here with those cars, and I have to say, exterior-wise, it's actually quite daring, different than the competitors, quite strong and modern in the design. It's a little bit longer than before, so you have more interior space. That is a significant change to the predecessor, especially that you now have some, real legroom. This is pretty cool. Then also the styling on the interior is pretty daring. So a very modern cockpit layout with some different ideas, especially in the GT trim. You also have those great sporty seats. So the GT trim is also the one to go for if you want something really fancy. Yeah, pricing wise, it will start pretty attractive with a normal petrol engine with about 22,000 euros, taking German reference prices. The top one then 35,000, the GT with the top petrol engine. And then you always have everything in what you already need. And then this is also the starting price, about 35,000 for the electric version, up to 42,000 here in the GT trim. So the difference, more or less, will be about 8,000 euros then from the top GT petrol spec to the top e-2008. And it depends on it. It's definitely more expensive, yes, if you take governmental subsidiaries in comparison then, and also some taxation benefits. This can actually even out the difference then. At the end of the day, well, it's more about than the driving, and has been great with both ICE and EV. This vehicle is extreme fun. So it's really a lot of fun to drive this one. Yeah, I feel somewhat cramped as a tall person in the interior. I have enough space, yes, but like from seat position wise, interestingly, especially due to those GT seats, I did not get any back pain overall, although I felt cramped a little bit, so it was actually quite fine in the end of the day. With this iCockpit with a small steering wheel, that has some disadvantages as for the visibility somewhat, and space for your legs and the steering wheel, but yet again, due to the small steering wheel and this, arcade-alike gaming characteristic, it was so much fun to drive. Then, of course, this new platform, and also with a low center of gravity here with the EV. Driving the EV and the petrol engine felt, not too different actually. This one here, yeah, a little bit more weight, but then also a little bit more connection to the weight at the ground. So both were actually a lot of fun to drive. This one here and the EV, of course, with a more silent drive. It's up to you. And I think it would really matter the charging infrastructure. And are you predominantly going short ways and have charging infrastructure? EV way to go. If you're more like go also on longer journeys and so on, charging infrastructure not that good, with your household, then the petrol is still the way to go. Yeah, and the petrol is also actually quite high in fuel economy, quite high in the fuel consumption for this size of a vehicle. EV, it was really hard to get a realistic figure. It will drain the battery when it's cold, that's clear, although they're also using a heat pump here, so we have to see how that one plays out on the long run. But you don't calculate a range that you would say like, I really see, there's 10 kilometers more or less. You need the charging infrastructure and have, always to have a buffer that you don't get any range anxiety. Overall, I think this car is a very nice offer, also price performance wise, both in the petrol and in the EV version.